4, 3, 2.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Meet the Shop Teachers. Today, I have from Electrical, Mr. Adam Burns.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
So this is our second installment. So this show is still in its experimental stages. I have my loyal Period 3 freshmen here knowing what they're doing, and like I say, it's always the mark of trusting how much they learned if I can do this and not worry about what's going on over there. Anyway, so tell us a little bit about the electrical program for those parents and students potentially wanting to be here. What do you do up there?
Sure, okay, I can take you through the program from freshman to senior, basically.
Do that, please.
Okay. We have a 4-year program here. We start out with the freshmen doing low voltage things, basically doorbells, door releases, things like that, low voltage. Mm-hmm. Once they pick to come into our shop, we move them up into more residential wiring. So Romex wiring you'd find in a house.
Right.
Once they get to about sophomore year, they're going to finish up their Romex wiring. They're going to get into more advanced residential wiring, like armored cable. Mm-hmm. Junior year, we expect them to finish up everything they need to finish up in the shop because we're getting them ready to go out to work on co-op. So they'll do some more industrial things, like EMT, which is a pipe, rigid steel, which is a thicker pipe, which requires a lot more tooling to get it to work. And they're going to be introduced to services, which is how the power comes into your house, and motor controls, other things that they're expected to learn when they get their job.
So when you say a pipe, in an industrial setting, like a factory, mm-hmm. Does that mean there's like a ton of wires that have to go through there?
Sure.
Okay.
And they have to know how many wires can go in what size pipe, what type of wire, and what pipe to use where. So there's a lot of code involved in selecting the right things. So there's a lot of classroom work involved in addition to the shop work.
And what about mathematics?
There are mathematics. It's not how it was when I was a student here. The most advanced mathematics they'll have to do is algebra. We used to do trigonometry, which they will need to do before they get their license, but they'll learn that when they go to school afterwards.
So your program is very big, very popular, because there's two of you, Mr. Cormio and yourself.
Yes.
And how does that work? How do people get chosen for electrical? Because it involves a lot of safety issues, too.
Sure, yeah. Mostly it's the kids who want to be there, and that's the best thing for the kids to want to be in the shop. Safety is a big thing. Our first year, in addition to everything I told you about the technical aspects of it, we do mostly safety. Because once they get into the higher voltages, there is a danger of getting an electric shock. And in addition to getting an electric shock, there's also regular shop hazards, like we use saws and drills and regular hand tools, and they have to be taught all of that stuff from zero. So there is a big safety component of it.
Very interesting. Now, yourself, what is your background, and how did you come to be teaching here at your alma mater?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I graduated here in 1989, and I ended up going to college after here. I wanted to be an electrical engineer, and I didn't know what an electrical engineer was. I just thought it sounded cool. So somehow I got into a good school, University of Lowell. It was called University of Lowell at the time. And I was in engineering school, and I wasn't ready for the academics, so it wasn't really a good fit for me, so I ended up leaving during my first year. And to recoup everything I missed along the way, because I wasn't the best student in the VOC, I went to community college for a couple of years. I went to Middlesex. Mm-hmm. Then I decided I wanted to be an industrial designer. So I somehow got into Mass College of Art. Another lucky break, I somehow got in there. Graduated from Mass College of Art, became a model maker, which makes models for industrial purposes before they make the real ones. And I really wasn't happy in that field. Even though the economy was booming at the time, just like it is now, there weren't really that many opportunities around here for that. and I wanted to start my family and start a life and buy a house and all those things. And I went back to my original trade, which was an electrician. My father had his own business in Medford. He sold it a couple of years ago. Because the opportunity for electricians is always there when the economy's fast or slow. And I was able to get a job right away. After that, I ended up working for my father again. And together we ran the company for many, many years. And he was coming to the point where he was looking at retirement. And I was going to have to decide if I was going to take over the company or buy the company, take over it, or do something else with my life. And the teacher here, who was my teacher, Mr. Ritchie, mentioned that he was retiring. So I talked to him about maybe applying for a job here. Unfortunately, at the time, he retired as planned, but the school did not hire a second electrician, electrical teacher. So Mr. Cormier was on his own for a few years. So I just went back into working as an electrician. A few years later, I heard that they were, in fact, this school was going to hire a second electrical teacher, just like it always had been. So I tried again, and I took my test and got in. And here I am, 6 years ago today. Well,
That's
6
great.
years ago.
That's great. That's great. So now comparing teaching electrical to working in the industry, what are the assets and liabilities of each?
Well, there is a big teaching component in the trades built in. When you start out, you're an apprentice, so you work as a student for your first 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Whether that's plumbing, HVAC, electrical, any of the trades, you're going to be a student. When you become a fully licensed professional, then in a sense you become a teacher because you're going to be assigned a younger person to work for you. So there's even a licensed plumber or hairdresser or any of the licensed trades, they're a teacher as well as a professional. So you always have, but it's a one-on-one situation. You're always teaching, and you're always learning as well. So that's the same. Now, as far as a difference, it's a big. I'm still getting used to the difference in speed, because in the commercial world, it's all about getting things done and making money.
Right.
Where in an educational setting, it's more about making sure the kids understand what you're doing.
Right.
And it's not about making money, even though that's how I was raised, is to, get the job done, get it done right. Now we're focusing more about doing it right than fast.
Right.
So it's a big change. It's a whole life change.
That's very interesting. Now, when the kids get out into the real world on co-op, do they have a hard time adjusting to the faster speed?
Not usually. Most of them take right to it like a duck to water. We have 21 students on co-op right now. Seniors that, if you don't know how the co-op program works, they come to school 1 week for their academics, and then they go out into work for an actual company working as an actual apprentice electrician for a week. So they go week on, week off. And most of the kids are doing great, and I'm very proud of them. And they take right to it.
That's a large group of people out on co-op. That's great.
It is, yeah. Some of them have trouble adjusting because there's not much room for error out in the real world. You can't be late. You can't not have your uniform. You can't decide to go home for lunch and not come back.
I'm sure they thought about it.
Yeah. But most of them get used to the game pretty quick.
Right.
They're doing very well.
Right.
And the money doesn't hurt either that they're making now.
Now, one of my old students is an electrician, and he used to tell me horror stories about what he would find in basements of restaurants and places like that. Do you have any such stories?
How much time do you have? and what is this rated?
Just out of curiosity.
Oh, I have lots of horror stories. I'm surprised I still eat out at restaurants. Do you really want one?
Sure. Give us one that's palatable.
Okay, I'll give you one. It was a local butcher shop,
Yeah.
And I'm a vegan now. I don't
Okay.
even eat meat.
Because of this?
This was probably a piece of the puzzle.
Oh my.
But it was a local butcher shop, and I'm not going to mention any names, but every year during Greek Easter, truckloads of lambs would come in, and the floor would be so slippery with
Oh wow.
the juices dripping out of the
Right.
lambs. And I started when I was a little kid working for my dad, working summers. And I
Right.
would be slipping around with these lamb bodies going all over the place. And I'm not going to get into graphic detail.
Please don't.
But when you work in the trades, you have to go into a lot of places that you wouldn't expect to go into.
Right.
And once I stepped on a person.
What?
In Cambridge, I went into an electrical room, and I walked in, and there was a person laying on the floor. Thank God he was okay. He was sleeping in there. He found a place to sleep.
Oh wow.
And he just said, "Oh, sorry, I'm leaving," and went on his way. But there's a lot of unusual things you encounter when you work in people's homes and you work in people's business. You go behind the scenes,
Right.
in a way.
Right. Very interesting. So tell us a little bit about now your interaction with other shops. Robotics, for instance, they deal with electricity. Do they consult you on wiring sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes. The big difference between robotics and us is they would say AC or DC. We use AC power, they use DC power. An easier way to explain it is we wire buildings and they wire equipment. So their projects are focused on electronics and machining equipment to make robots and robotic devices, whereas we provide the power so they can do what they do. We basically wire the building. So if they, for instance, they got a water cutting machine last year, and it sprays a jet of water, and it can cut steel, I think a 1/4 inch thick. I'm not, but it can cut really thick steel. We really don't know anything about that, but we do know about the machine. We know how much power it is, so we were able to safely get power from the panel and wire up the machine so they can do their work.
Right.
So we're sort of like the suppliers of the power and making sure the equipment is safe, and they take it from there. They would use the equipment.
Now, I was speaking to Rich Cormio about a project that I had in mind for this studio. And I don't know if it's feasible or not. I'm just going to mention it
Sure,
now.
yeah.
So these lights are controlled manually. You have to climb up and aim them so you don't have shadows in certain places. So I had the idea, what if maybe not all of them, maybe this backlight, for instance, which will define us as more of a 3D person, 3D persons, what if that was remotely controlled and could move a little bit?
Sure.
Is that a feasible idea?
Oh, absolutely.
It is.
Yeah, and if you go to concerts and stage productions, they have those on the market. They're very expensive, but they're getting cheaper, as all technology tends to do. So in a project like that, robotics would come up with the mount for that
Okay.
and the control. That would all be electronic.
Right.
And then we would supply the light itself and the power for the light. So it would be a good joint project.
So this light, specific light, we'd have to change it. We wouldn't be able to use that.
You could.
Yeah.
You could. They would fashion some kind of mount for that.
And what about the cost? I think that's what people have been saying. Well, won't that be expensive?
It could be, sure.
Yeah.
Now you could go out and spend thousands of dollars,
Yeah.
or if you have the time,
Yeah.
and they do a lot of stuff like this, is they get secondhand equipment, they get things donated, they take apart old equipment and repurpose it for what you're using. So they could find servo motors in a Roomba vacuum cleaner that may work for this situation.
Right. Very interesting.
So a lot of what they do is repurposing existing things to save money, because anyone can go out and buy something, but
Right.
it's different to learn how to actually make it from scratch.
Right. Well, when you're in a vocational school, that saves a little bit of money, doesn't it?
Absolutely, sure,
Right.
yeah.
So maybe it is feasible.
Oh, it's completely feasible, yeah.
Huh. Very good to know. So we'll have to talk more when the show is
Yes.
over. I have a little story about electrical for you.
Okay.
My father was a chemist, and he used to work for a company called Cambridge Chemical Company in It was on 3rd Street in Cambridge, long gone. This is decades ago. And Leechmere Sales was near him. Do you remember that store?
Sure.
So Leechmere Sales remodeled their store, and they expanded it, and they got rid of all their fluorescent lights. And I came home from school one day and I saw all these fixtures on the floor in the basement. And over the succeeding weeks and months, my father rewired all those lights and made them work. And I have
Excellent.
those hanging in my basement to this day.
I'm sure they're still working, right?
They are.
Excellent.
Most of them are. We made a basement apartment and got rid of some of them, but
Okay.
The part that's still mine,
Yeah.
they're working, you know. So now I watched everything my father did, but I didn't learn a thing. I just don't have that aptitude.
Okay.
You know.
Well, I'm sure your dad was a lot like mine, who brought things home that fell off of a truck or they were throwing away.
No, he knew the owner of that.
Oh,
and
no,
they,
yeah.
and they gave it to him.
They really would throw away
Yeah.
tons of equipment. In fact, you said 3rd Street.
Yeah.
Those labs that were there, I think they're all gone now. We
Yeah.
did all the wiring for the owners for those labs. So
Oh.
we worked in those labs for years and years.
Probably
And we were
you-
probably working in the same buildings.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very
Those are all
interesting.
condos, I think, now, and office blocks.
Yeah. So you were a kid in the 80s, though?
Yes.
So my father, no, he passed away in 1981, so he would have been there from the 50s through the
Yeah.
70s. Interesting. What are some of the other things now, working with construction and working with, what's the other one? There's construction
Carpentry.
and
There's
carpentry. What do you do with those shops?
So
There goes my mic.
every time a shop moves or gets renovated,
Yeah.
maybe with the exception of this, because this was a very big project and a outside contractor was hired. But most of the time, when a new shop either arrives or is moved in the vocational school, we'll work with the construction and the carpentry shops to build it out. And carpentry, construction they'll take down all the old stuff, do the demo. They'll put up walls if the walls need to be put up. They will do all the painting, move all the furniture, basically do all the heavy work. We would do all the electrical. So, for instance, the school store, which just moved downstairs, we changed all the receptacles, we upgraded the lighting, carpentry did some of the work with the ceiling, construction took down an old wall, repaired the floor, made it one big space. It's an ongoing process, it never ends, and it's great because the kids get real world experience.
That's for sure. Wow. Very interesting. So now, do you offer, is there testing, like written tests? You said there's licensing. How does that work?
So to become a licensed electrician, you have to work so many hours in the field. It's about 2,000 hours. It's about 4 years. You also have to take about 600 hours of schooling. Again, that's about 4 years of school. When you come to a vocational program like ours, you get to skip the first year, or we teach you the first year here of shop, which is your hands-on, and we also teach you your first year of bookwork school. So when you graduate from here, you have 3 years to go. You have to go to school on your own for 3 years at night to get the rest of your school hours. You have to work for about 3 hours for a licensed electrician to get your work hours. Once you get all those done, it usually takes about 4 years. You can go up for your tests. There are 2 tests to get a journeyman electrician in Massachusetts. There's a practical and there's a written. Written is mostly code. There's some math that they're going to have to learn. Practical is, they show you pictures of real world things. You have to identify tools. You have to cite codes on how you would actually do things. Once you pass those 2, then you're a journeyman electrician. Then you can work on your own.
That's a lot of steps.
It's a lot of work, right?
Now, I'm sure there might be people that you've known, students that you've known, that were great hands-on, but they just couldn't get through those tests.
Yeah.
So what happens to those people?
I'm one of those people. I'm better with the hands-on than the tests.
Yeah.
The night class that you take really helps you prepare for that, because you do a lot of practice tests. And unfortunately, it's still a 3-hour sitting down multiple choice test. It's been the same. When I did it, it was on paper. Now it's on a computer. But that class is a great way to practice. There are also courses you can take just to help you pass that test, a prep class. So if you're someone who has trouble studying or isn't really a book person, you can go to a course that will teach you just how to pass that test. So there's help out there for you if you need to.
And then there's the test to teach school too.
That's another test.
That's a lot of testing.
That's another one, yeah.
So I want to go back a little bit, and then I want to go forward. So
Okay.
I want to go back. My grandfather had a house that was built in the 20s, and he passed away in 88, and my mother and I sold the house in 91. Up until the end, they had cloth wiring. Cloth wiring. So there were a lot of houses still have that.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
even now.
absolutely. Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, in towns like Medford, Malden, Cambridge, Somerville, Boston, these are old neighborhoods. And most of these houses were built before World War II. Now, before World War II, they used a different wiring method than they did afterwards because they didn't have the plastics and technology to make it back then. My mother's house was what they call knob and tube, and we lived in West Medford. That was one of the first houses in Medford, the first neighborhoods to be built with electricity. And that was a cloth-covered wire like what was in your grandparents' house. That changed in probably the 30s or 40s. They changed to armored cable, which was a little safer. Later on, they changed to Romex like during the 50s, 60s, 70s, and they're still using that method today. We teach the old methods because in this part of the country, the students are going to end up working in a lot of older buildings. So they have to learn how to deal with the old stuff as well as deal with the new stuff.
Safety-wise, I'm sure the cloth wiring had a lot more fire capability than the armored one, or is that a fallacy?
Actually, the cloth wire was great for its day, and the problem with that, it was rubber coated with cloth on top of the rubber, and rubber only lasts so long.
Right.
So a lot of these old homes, most of the wiring that's in the walls that no one's touched is usually okay. And the code says you don't have to change your old wiring in your house. If it's there, it's there. As long as it was built to code at the time, it's okay now. The problem is that, like you said, that wiring is breaking down. Nothing lasts forever.
Right.
Even though it was well built and it was well installed, it has a lifespan. So the insurance companies are the ones pushing for the change. So if an insurance company finds out you have older wiring in your house, they may not offer you homeowners insurance.
Just like having a German Shepherd.
Right, you're on the bad list. So we have done many rewirings of houses, and it's a big job.
Wow.
Because it's cheaper for them to have us rewire it than have a huge homeowner's insurance policy that will cover this older wiring.
Right.
So it all comes back to safety. It's to make it safe, to make it safer, to prevent fires. So it's better for everybody in the long run, but eventually someone has to upgrade the wiring eventually.
Wow. Okay, we went in the past, now we're going in the future.
Okay.
Solar energy. Now,
Yes.
how does solar energy affect your profession? Does this mean that electrical may be a thing of the past?
Great question. And this was very controversial a couple years ago. So when solar became very popular, it's been around since 60s and 70s, but it only recently has gotten popular because of the government subsidies, where there's all these economic incentives for you to get your house going on solar very cheaply. But as far as the trade goes, when solar first started becoming popular in New England, the solar companies were using non-licensed electricians to install their equipment because their claim was, we know the equipment, we are trained in the equipment, we can install it. The problem is Massachusetts state law says in order to install electrical equipment, you have to be a licensed electrician.
Right.
So they ran into a problem. So the solar companies went to the legislature to see if they could get an exemption. So they would be putting solar panels up in your house and not be a licensed electrician. And their argument was, we know the equipment, we can do it safely, and we're going to be a heck of a lot cheaper than bringing licensed electricians. The other side of the coin was, they're not used to working on houses in New England, and they're not licensed to do all the things we're licensed to do. So it came to a vote, and they actually made a law that said, you cannot work on a building in Massachusetts unless you're a licensed electrician, even if you're doing solar.
Right.
So that's a great boon for us in the electrical trade, and it's also better for the homeowner because they know a licensed electrician's working on it, and not someone who. It's safer. It's not someone who just went to a one-week training course
Right.
and learned how to install a solar panel. It has to be done by a licensed electrician.
Now, have you worked alongside of these solar people, and can you tell the scammers from the real deal?
I actually haven't.
Okay.
And I'm not ready personally to make the jump for my house because I'm not convinced that economically it's worth it for me to do it. But the work I've done, the work I've seen, it seems pretty good. But I don't have any personal experience working with them.
Right. I'm just wondering if people actually save money with that because they're paying for 10 years for that stuff.
Some people claim they do. Some people say it's just, it's not worth it.
And plus, they're ugly. They make your roof ugly.
Well, they also, they signal that you care about the environment.
Yeah, but your roof still looks ugly.
Well, that was one of my big concerns. I talked to some solar installers, and I said, well, my roof isn't going to last forever.
Right.
What happens when I need a new roof? And their answer was put on a metal roof. And I said, that doesn't last forever either.
And that would
Nothing
make
lasts forever.
a lot of noise when it rains, wouldn't it?
Yes. And I said, that's great too, but he couldn't really come up with an answer as to what happens when I need a new roof. And I think economically it does work out for some people, but I haven't been convinced yet.
Wow. Okay. Well, is there anything that I haven't covered?
Yeah, your studio lights, we were going to talk about them.
Well, we're doing that after the show.
Okay.
Anyway, I want to thank you, Adam, for taking the time
All
to
right, thank
talk
you
to
for
me
having
today.
me.
And we'll be back next time with another shop teacher in Meet the Shop Teachers. Until then, I'm Leonard Kaplan saying so long and thanks for joining.